Curtis and Marjorie Chillingworth were not the type of people anyone expected to disappear. They were established members of Palm Beach County society. Curtis was a powerful circuit judge with a reputation for integrity and discipline. Marjorie was a respected community member, gardener, wife, mother, and grandmother. Their lives appeared stable. Their future appeared secure. But in June of 1955, everything changed in a single night. The disappearance of the Chillingworths shocked Florida and triggered one of the largest investigations Palm Beach County had ever seen. What began as a missing persons case would eventually uncover allegations of corruption, conspiracy, betrayal, and a carefully planned act designed to silence a judge who refused to compromise his principles. This is the story of Curtis and Marjorie Chillingworth.
Welcome to Case Files of the Missing, where the search for answers does not end with time. Please like, comment, and subscribe.
Curtis Eugene Chillingworth was born into one of Palm Beach County's most prominent pioneer families. The Chillingworth name carried influence throughout South Florida long before Curtis entered public service. His family was connected to the early growth and development of the region, and Curtis followed a path that would place him at the center of Florida's legal system. He attended the University of Florida and later entered the legal profession. By the age of 28, he became one of the youngest circuit judges in Florida history. Over time, Curtis built a reputation that extended far beyond Palm Beach County. He was respected. He was feared by dishonest attorneys. And he was known for refusing to bend under pressure. People who appeared in his courtroom understood quickly that Curtis Chillingworth believed deeply in professionalism and ethics. He did not tolerate corruption, dishonesty, or manipulation of the court system. If attorneys crossed ethical lines, Curtis addressed it directly. If officials abused their positions, Curtis noticed. That reputation would eventually place him in direct conflict with people who had far more to lose than public embarrassment. By 1955, Curtis was considered one of the most respected judges in Florida. But according to investigators, that same integrity may have made him a target. Marjorie Crowd McKinley Chillingworth is often overshadowed in retellings of this case. But Marjorie was far more than simply the wife of a judge. She was deeply involved in her community and known throughout Palm Beach County social circles. Friends described her as warm, elegant, and devoted to her family. She belonged to the local garden club and became known for cultivating award-winning flowers, especially gerberas. Marjorie and Curtis built a life together over decades. They raised 3 daughters. They became grandparents. And by the summer of 1955, they were enjoying what should have been a peaceful stage of life near the ocean in Manalapan, Florida. One of the most heartbreaking details in this case is how ordinary their plans were before they vanished. A carpenter was expected at their home the following morning to help build a playground for their grandchildren. Curtis had court scheduled later that day. Nothing suggests the couple planned to disappear. Nothing suggests they intended to leave their lives behind. Everything about the evidence points toward interruption. Something happened after they arrived home that night, and neither Curtis nor Marjorie would ever be seen again. On June 14, 1955, Curtis and Marjorie attended dinner with friends in West Palm Beach. The evening appeared completely normal. After dinner, around 10 p.m., the couple returned to their beachfront home in Manalapan. At some point after arriving home, investigators believe they began preparing for bed. Then something changed. The following morning, the carpenter arrived at the residence and immediately noticed signs that something was wrong. The front door was open. The house was empty. Curtis and Marjorie were gone. As investigators processed the scene, disturbing details emerged. The porch light had been smashed. Blood drops were found leading toward the beach. Spools of adhesive tape were discovered both inside the home and near the shoreline. Their swimsuits remained inside the house. Money and valuables had not been taken. Curtis's vehicle remained parked at the residence. Nothing about the scene indicated a voluntary disappearance. And when Curtis failed to appear in court that morning, concern escalated immediately. Those closest to him knew something was terribly wrong. Curtis Chillingworth was known for punctuality and discipline. Missing court without explanation was completely out of character. Authorities launched an extensive search. But despite efforts by land, sea, and air, there was no sign of Curtis or Marjorie. It was as if they had vanished into the darkness between their home and the Atlantic Ocean. The disappearance of a senior circuit judge created enormous pressure on investigators. Palm Beach County authorities worked aggressively to determine who would target someone like Curtis Chillingworth. At first, theories varied widely. Some believed Curtis may have angered dangerous criminals through his courtroom rulings. Others questioned whether organized crime connections existed somewhere beneath the surface. But over time, investigators began focusing closer to home, closer to the legal system itself. One name eventually drew increasing attention: Joseph Alexander Peel, Jr. Peel was a former municipal judge and attorney in West Palm Beach. Publicly, Peel held a respected position. Privately, investigators later alleged he was connected to corruption and unethical legal practices. Years before the disappearance, Curtis had reportedly disciplined Peel over serious ethical violations. Involving a divorce case, in which Peel represented both sides, Curtis warned him that further misconduct would not be tolerated. According to later testimony, Peel feared additional scrutiny from Curtis. Investigators would eventually conclude that Curtis's integrity posed a direct threat to Peel's career and influence. For years, however, authorities lacked enough evidence to fully break the case open. Then came the confession that changed everything. In 1960, Floyd Lucky Holzapfel confessed to involvement in the disappearance of Curtis and Marjorie Chillingworth. According to his statement, he and another man, George Bobby Lincoln, carried out the abduction after being hired for the job. Holzapfel claimed the couple was taken from their home during the night and transported by boat into open water. Their hands had allegedly been taped. Weights were reportedly attached to their bodies, and somewhere far offshore, Curtis and Marjorie were thrown into the ocean. The confession horrified Florida. Investigators believed Marjorie had not originally been the intended target, but because she was present during the abduction, she disappeared alongside her husband. Holzapfel implicated Joseph Peel as the person connected to arranging the crime. George Lincoln later cooperated with authorities and testified against Peel in exchange for immunity. The courtroom proceedings that followed exposed a stunning narrative involving corruption, power, and betrayal within Florida's legal system. Peel was ultimately convicted in connection with Curtis's death and later entered a plea related to Marjorie's disappearance. But even after convictions were secured, one painful reality remained unchanged. Curtis and Marjorie were still missing. Their bodies were never recovered. The Chillingworth case became one of the most notorious criminal investigations in Florida history. For many people, the case represented more than the disappearance of a judge and his wife. It represented the collapse of public trust. Curtis Chillingworth symbolized integrity within the legal system. According to investigators, the people responsible for his disappearance came from inside the same system he worked to protect. That betrayal stunned Palm Beach County. Years later, Joseph Peel reportedly admitted he knew about the plot, but denied personally ordering the deaths. Even now, decades after the crime, questions remain about every detail surrounding that night in Manalapan. What exactly happened inside the Chillingworth home? How much planning went into the abduction? Were additional individuals involved? And where exactly did Curtis and Marjorie disappear beneath the waters of the Atlantic? Those answers may never be fully known. Curtis and Marjorie were eventually declared legally deceased, but their family never received the closure of bringing them home. Today, memorial markers honor their names, but the ocean never returned them. The disappearance of Curtis and Marjorie Chillingworth remains one of Florida's most haunting historical cases, not only because two respected members of the community vanished without a trace, but because the case exposed something much darker beneath the surface of power and influence. Curtis Chillingworth built his reputation on ethics and accountability. Investigators ultimately believed those principles placed him directly in danger. Marjorie disappeared simply because she was beside him. That reality continues to make this case especially tragic. A husband and wife returned home after dinner. They expected the next morning to arrive like any other. Instead, they became part of a mystery that would shock Florida for generations. And even though convictions were eventually obtained, one truth remains unchanged to this day. Curtis and Marjorie Chillingworth have never been found. Thank you for watching Case Files of the Missing. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because every missing person deserves to be found, and every story deserves to be heard.